See multi-streaming with Restream IO. It's waiting. It's I think it's about a 5. Well, I thought it was about maybe it's a 10-second delay. It should be up and running. Okay, it's showing it. Great, Curtis. Click on the YouTube link and can at least one person send in a chat there. What I want to do is in a minute. I believe if you click that channel above, you should see the live stream. Is that not true, Eric? Okay, Brandon says it's not working. We don't see it. All right, I'm gonna. Maybe I said it. Okay, I think I changed it. I think I changed it to restricted. So it is working as restricted, and so you need this specific link to the video. Okay, fantastic. I am now going to mute myself in virtual classroom. Can someone please try giving a chat in the... Perfect, thanks, Curtis. I think we will have a slight delay, but I'm going to, yeah, a few second delay, perfect. I'm gonna mute myself in virtual classroom, and I'm gonna start running the lesson in the YouTube video. Okay, Eric, you just need to be logged into Google, so you can log in to your school Google account, and that would give you access. But otherwise, you can still chat here, and I'll check back and forth to this chat window. But I think it would be easier if we just all stayed in the YouTube. Just 1 second, we've got a video coming in. Turn off my... Okay, sorry about that. As emails pop in, I need to check them from time to time to see what's going on. All right, I'm now in YouTube. Sorry, I'm now in Replit. All right, I'm going to switch back and forth between the YouTube video and Replit to see if there's any chat questions there. So the idea is, please let me know if this is large enough. If I should, maybe I'll increase a little bit. I'll increase the size a wee bit. What I want to start with is, first of all, we're always going to include comments at the very beginning of our code. Comments are done with hashtags. Author Holmes. Date is January 8th, 2020. a menu-driven program with various functions. So what I want to do is I want to generate a, and I will share this code with you afterwards. I'm going to generate a menu-driven program, which means that I will give options to allow a user to choose choices, and then it would go and execute those choices. In order to do that, we want to be able to constantly go back to the menu. So anytime that we want to repeat something, we need some sort of a loop. There are two types of loops in Python. One is called a counted loop, which means we know it's going to happen exactly a certain number of times, 3 times, 12 times. Another one is an uncounted loop, or we call it a while true. So I'm going to say that this is while true, and this will execute as long as true is true. And true, of course, will be true forever. So this will allow this program to run indefinitely, which means that anytime I have finished a program, it'll go back to the menu. And that's typically what we want in a program, is that we come back to see when I've done something, go back to the menu, what do you want to do now? Do that, come back to the menu, what do you want to do now? So I'm going to, in order to print to my console, I'm going to use the print statement. Print is very useful in the CMU Academy just to see what's going on. You can print out various items to your screen. If you get to a point where you're getting one-on-one help with me, I will often use the print statement just to print something out to find out what's happening inside of the program. For now, I'm just going to use it to print some words to the terminal. So I'm going to say to the console, sorry. Welcome to my first menu-driven program. And I like to run this just to see if everything's working. I run, and it's a little bit different than what I expected. I'm certainly getting welcome to my first menu-driven program, but of course it's not stopping, it's continually doing that. Well, of course it's doing that because it's in a loop. So what I want to do is I'm going to print out my options. So I might say print, I'm going to menu-driven program, please choose from the options below. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the numbers. So 1 will be add 2 numbers. 2 subtract 2. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an input. So I want to have the person either enter the number 1 or the number 2, and that's going to help me decide what happens in my program. So I need to come up with a variable name to choose what I should use. So I will choose, maybe choice as I think is a reserved word, so I'm going to choose, I'm just going to put num. I'll say num is equal to, I'm going to use the input function, and whatever I put in the brackets will also be printed to the screen. The difference here is that the input method will also wait for an answer from the user, which number. So if I run this now it says, welcome to my first menu-driven program. Please choose from the options below. 1, add 2 numbers. 2, subtract 2 numbers. Which number? Notice that it's not continuing forever because it's waiting at this point here, number 9. It's waiting for me to do something. But of course, once I actually do something, if I say number 1, it's just going to come right back to the menu. So what I want to do instead is I want to now throw in some conditional statements. So in Unit 4, you start to learn, in your next unit in CMU, you'll start learning about conditional statements. But these are if statements where we make a decision based on one thing or the other. So I'm going to have here if num is equal to, and I always make this mistake, I put 1 equals. I'm going to say 1 colon. So mistakes made here. The equal sign is known as an assignment operator. The plus sign is known as the addition operator. So this would be saying, let's assign the equal sign. Let's assign num plus 5 to the variable called num. That's what this would be doing. Here, I don't actually want to assign the value 1 to num. What I want to do is I want to do a comparison. So to compare two things, I can't put 1 equal sign. It's actually 2 equal sign. So this will be if num is equal to 1, colon. Now I want to include whatever it is that I want done. So I'm just going to say print. This is a quick test. Print you chose 1. All right, so the idea here is I'm just printing out something to see if it works. And then I'm going to come down here. If num is equal to 2, you chose 2. Right, so now if I run this, which number? I'm going to go with a 1. And I put 1, and then it came back, and it came back to the menu. So it didn't actually arrive to this. It didn't print 1 or 2. And the reason for that is because type of num. So a type will tell us what num is. So I'm going to assign the value 1 to num, and then this type command will tell me what type of information is stored inside of the variable num. So if I run that again, it says it's of class, it's of class string. So the input function always returns a string value, which means it sees it as a series of characters. So if I want to make the distinction between a number, an integer, and a string of characters, it means we have to put a quotation mark around a string of characters. So this will now be checking to see if num is equal to the string 1. And the same thing I need to do with the string 2. And that's because the input statement will always take string values. So I could say yes or no. It will store a series of letters. So now if I try running it, if I choose 1, it properly assesses that the 1 that I typed in, which is of type string, is equal to the string 1 here. Okay, so notice how I used line 10. I just printed something out. It's not part of my program. It was to try to figure out why something was happening. So I used this built-in command called type to see what type of variable num was, and that helped me kind of resolve what was going on. So I'm going to delete line 10 now. Second thing I want to highlight is notice that I've got a colon after the true while true statement, and then everything is indented. So Python takes all of its coding based on the indentation of characters. So this colon means that it's going to execute everything in this loop that has been indented. So all of these things are inside of that loop. If I come down and I don't put something inside of the loop and I print end, that's not part of the loop, and so that would not be repeated. What number? 1, 2. So you can see it's working, but it never prints the value end. If I wanted to, I could add a e end. Now what I could do is I could do a check for if num is equal to e. What I can do is I can break out of my loop. If it breaks out of the loop, it'll stop repeating, and then it would print line 19. Program has. So if I run this, which number? 1 works, 2 works, and then if I type the letter E, the program has ended. Note something, the input statement, notice how this 1 is right up against the question mark. So when I ask for an input, I typically like to put in a space. It just formats better, it's easier to read. And the other thing I like to do is print some lines to give it some formatting, maybe less so there, but I just set off the separate out each time my menu runs. So 1, we chose 1, Well, I think I probably want it at the beginning. Okay, I mean, it's a little bit easier to set things off. So that spacing makes a difference. It's important. I'm going to come back and see if there's any. Okay, no questions so far. I'm also going to check my virtual classroom. Still no questions. Okay. So what I want to do is, if I want to add two numbers, I don't actually want to just say you chose one. I want something to happen. So the idea here is that if I didn't do that, if I said, well, I don't really know what I want to happen yet when I hit 1. If I try running this code right now, I get an error. It says file on the program called main.py, which is this line here. On line 16, down here, it says there's an indentation error. I had expected an indented block. So on line 16, it's identified an error. Why is that? Because after line 14, so the if statements, which end in a colon, anytime there's a colon, it is expected the next block of code to be indented, and nothing is indented. That's why in CMU Academy, you'll often see they've used this word pass. So pass actually does nothing. It's just a placeholder, but it allows the program to execute without generating an error, an indentation error in this case. And so I can kind of create the structure of my program without doing all the hard work. I can kind of lay out the basics by using these passes, because I don't know what's going to happen yet in each of these instances. So if I run now, the program works, but of course, if I add two numbers, it'll do nothing. It just moves back to the menu. So what I really want to happen is I want to create a function, because this was a menu-driven program. Boom, we've already got the menu-driven program, but with various functions. So functions are used to break up our code into manageable chunks of software. Now, we're going to start with very, very basic things. So our functions, at times, you're going to say, oh, why are we creating a function? This is just too easy. I can do it in one line. Well, the idea is that we want to practice creating these functions, practice breaking up larger problems, even if they're relatively easy now, into smaller problems, so that when we do get to much larger problems, we know the basics of how to break those things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate two functions, add two numbers, subtract two numbers. So I'm going to define a function, and I'll call it add two. Say pass. So here I define my function. I say add two with a colon and then pass. And I'm going to do a second function called define subtract two. Notice how when I hit enter, it automatically indents it for me. It's expecting that. So I'm going to say pass here. Now if I try running my program again, it's doing what I think it should do, and it's not generating any errors. Okay, so this is looking good so far. When we define our functions, I want us to always include a triple quote. This is the standard within Python, and I'm going to give it a little description. And this is often the function's names, if they're simple, are going to just tell us what it does. So this is going to be add two numbers and return the answer. If it starts with three quotes, it needs to end with three quotes. Well, I'll show you here. The editor, as soon as I put in one quote, it's putting in the second one. It thinks that it, because if I open it, I need to close a quote. I put in the next one. It then thinks I'm finishing that quote. I type in a third, it's added the fourth one. So it's a little bit confusing in that you need to have it start with three, end with three. This function is obviously going to subtract two numbers and return the answer. Two numbers. Okay. So I'm going to, here, I'm going to generate this function. I'm going to ask the user for two numbers. So I'm going to say, one will be equal to input, what is the first number? I'm going to add a space at the end. And then num2 is going to be equal to input, what is the second? That space at the end. And then I'm going to say answer is equal to num1 plus num2. For now, I'm just going to try printing the answer to see if this does what I think it should do. So the issue is that although add two numbers has been defined, nowhere do I call that. I don't use it inside of my program. Oh, notice, by the way, all of this is red because I forgot to end the docstring notation on line 12. I need to add my last two quotes. Now, this is listed as a comment, and this code is generated back. Someone might ask, why don't you use just the hash tag? So the convention within Python is after function names. This is called a doc string. It gives a string of information about a function, and it's actually used as part of a built-in help features. So the computer can automatically look for the help that's associated with any function by looking for these triple quotes. It's also really nice because, as you saw, if I wanted to get rid of a whole bunch of code here, suppose there's some sort of error happening here on line 18, I could triple quote that and then come down to, say, line 24 and triple quote. So it's gotten rid of this code here, and it allows me to block out sections of code to test various things. So I use that for testing purposes all the time. But every function moving forward should have these triple quotes to describe what this does. So I have a function called add2. It asks for the two numbers, it adds them together, and then it tries to print the answer. But I never actually call this function. So what I want to do is, of course, if I've chosen number one, then what I want to do is I want to call the function add2. And add2, right, takes two brackets. I have to include the two brackets. And I'm going to test this now. I'm going to try running it. Notice I didn't go in and do the num2. Like, I don't code very much at all in one go. I always do one thing at a time, and then I test my code to see if it works. It's coming. Okay, still no questions. So I'm going to add two numbers. What is the first number? I'm going to say it's 5. And actually, no, I'm going to run this again. No, yeah. And then the second number I'll say is 10. And it prints 510. So and it looks like the math is not working inside of Python. Did it multiply? How did it get 510 by adding the first number to the second number? Any thoughts? Listed as string. Perfect. So it's listed as a string, not as an integer. Thank you, Thomas. So I need to, it's just taken the number 5 and it added the number 10. If I try added it, this same program is going to work if I say two numbers, and if I type in what is the first number, John space, second number is Holmes, it's just going to throw those two things together. So what we need to do is we need to convert these values to integers. So I'm going to take the num1 and I'm going to convert it to an integer. I'm going to take my num2 and I'm going to convert it to an integer. And now when I run the program, 1, if I type John, I type Holmes, and give me an error because of course it cannot convert the word John into an integer. So that's a downside with the integer function. But of course, if the user uses it correctly, what is the first number? I'll say 5. Second number 10. It converts 5 from a string into an integer, and it's able to generate that answer of 15. So this is good, but it says that my function is going to actually return the answer. So I've printed it, but I'm actually going to return it back to the main program. So instead of printing the answer, I'm going to return it. Return answer. And what I've just done is I call the function add to. It comes up. It asks for the input. It calculates the answer as 15. It will return 15 to my main program. So this would end up being replaced with the number 15. Well, watch what happens if I put that there, just if I actually put the number 15. If I run this, 1, it puts this value 1. It didn't write 15. Like, what's going on? Well, this 15 isn't really anything. So I've returned 15 when I call add to. But what I want to do is, oops, add to. Add to comes up, calculates the answer, and then this add to gets replaced with whatever that answer is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store my answer here. I'll say it's the response. So the response from my function, which in this case got converted into 15, gets stored into my response, and then I could print answer is. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to separate it what I'm going to print with a word response. So if the answer ends up being 15, that gets replaced by 15. It gets, using the assignment operator, assigned the variable called response. And then I'm going to print the answer is, and then I separate my answer, which is a string, comma, with the response, which would have a value of 15. Let me try running that. Add 2 numbers. What is the first number? 3. Second number, 8. The answer is 11. All right, so this, and then it comes back to my menu. So what we've generated here is a menu-driven program. It prints the menu here. I then have a series of if statements to check if the answer is 1, then I want to add 2 numbers. So that means that I call my function add to. It comes up here. It does the code to add the 2 numbers together. It returns the answer. It calculates the answer. It then returns that answer to the calling program. It was called down here in line 26. So that answer in this last case of 11 gets stored in the variable called response, and then I print it out. So that is how we can create a menu-driven program and how we can divide our program up into various functions. So your task right now for the rest of the period is going to be, I'm going to share this code with you right now. I will copy this and paste it inside of the YouTube link. Karen, you're 100% correct. And I'll talk about doing it that way later. I think it might be easier for some people to break it up, sort of. So this link will give you access to this code. So it's your starter code. And I'm just going to ask that you take, you'll have to, as soon as you start type editing, it should ask you to fork it, or you can also click down here and choose a fork option. And your task is going to be to generate the subtract function and get that to work. So we've got 25 minutes left in this block. Some people are going to be done in 2 minutes. Others are going to take a little bit longer. There's quite a bit of code here. The key thing is to see what's going on, follow the same bunch of code. I don't recommend copying and pasting. I recommend that you copy it by typing it out yourself. The more you practice typing the code, the better you're going to learn it, as opposed to just copying and pasting. And then recognize that you can see that my name is called John Holmes 4. So if you wanted to, I believe that you can share it. My username is John Holmes 4. It's probably not working because I probably can't find myself, but you would be able to invite your code, invite me to the code that way. I think that I will now stop the YouTube live stream, and so finish. Hang on, and I'm still open in the virtual classroom, so you can chat me in the virtual classroom, and you can also, of course, send me an email. So the goal is to generate that second function today in class, and then we're back at 1:30. Remember, the grade 12 students have their first unit quiz. I'm going to end the live stream, but I'll be back live in the virtual classroom and, of course, via email.